Industrial agriculture has also not helped the farmer in general. How many of you have heard of the Farm Bill? How many of you could explain what it is? Right, probably most of us can't. How convenient that it's confusing for us. Most of us don't know about it, don't really understand it, and therefore don't typically try to change it. The Farm Bill is key to why industrial agriculture in our country works the way that it does. So, US policies currently have pushed the price of grains like corn and soy down. This has not helped the farmer. How does all this work? So, initially, out of the Depression era, the Farm Bill, government farm policies, came out of this time. The goal was to limit production and support prices for farmers. Now that's been reversed over time. The Farm Bill essentially incentivizes increased production, which drives the price down. So, what does that mean? How does this work? And it can be kind of tricky. Poland talks about it in The Farm, that first reading from Omnivore's Dilemma, and I'll do my best to distill it here for you as well. You might want to take some notes. So initially, the Farm Bill came out of the Depression era, and not to encourage farmers to produce more food, but to keep them from going out of business from overproduction. During times, years, harvests, when a certain crop is overproduced, this collapses prices on the market, right? Because too many farmers have produced, let's just say corn, too much corn. They're all trying to sell it on the market. To be competitive, they try to offer it at a lower price, and this drives the price down. Crop surpluses collapse prices and therefore bankrupt farmers often. So if some farmers won't make it, they won't be able to continue with this livelihood. They'll switch livelihoods. Then during lean growing years, we won't have enough farmers to produce enough food for us. So the Farm Bill was designed again to limit production so that market prices don't collapse and that farmers can stay in business either way. This is how it worked. For storable commodities like corn, the government in the Farm Bill established a target price based off the cost of production. So a target price they would pay the farmer, which takes into account how much it costs to grow the corn, how much of a profit you need to make to stay in business, etc. If during this year, the market price, what the farmer would be able to get for his corn on the market price dropped below the target price established by the government, the farmer was given a choice. Instead of dumping the corn onto this weak market where there's already too much corn, which would then further lower the prices, leaving farmers worse off, pushing some of them out of business because they're not getting enough of a return on their investment because the prices are so low, the farmer had a choice. They could take out a loan, monetary loan from the government, based off the target price, and then give the government their corn as collateral. The government can store this in a granary. Then you can wait and see if market prices recover. So if market prices recover later on, say a month or two down the road, and it's now more worthwhile, more profitable for the farmer to sell the corn on the market, the farmer can do that. The farmer can take the corn back from the government, pay back the loan, and sell their product on the market for more money. All good. If the market price never rebounds, it stays low, then the farmer can elect to keep the money, keep the loan, which again is based sort of off how much it costs them to make the corn, how much they need to stay whole and stay in business. Farmer can keep the loan and let the government keep the corn, which the government can use for other things, trade, and as we'll come to find out, providing very cheap raw materials for our major food producing groups like Tyson and ADM and Cargill. So this worked pretty well up until about the 1970s when other powerful elites in the government, namely the secretaries of agriculture under different presidents, started playing a role in shaping the Farm Bill. And so one thing that there's a lot of different things that sort of connect to come together that accumulate into where we are now. One of the things that happened in the 60s is In order to help Nixon get reelected, the Secretary of Agriculture at the time sold a bunch of grain to Russia. And this created huge profits for the U.S. economy, and that's one thing politicians like to tout when the economy is doing well, when they're trying to get support or reelected. So it made the economy look really good, at least in terms of GNP and the stock market. Whether or not those benefits were distributed more widely is another question. But the sale to Russia, which resulted in a boost to the U.S. economy, also created a food shortage here, which reverberated into the prices in the grocery stores. Food prices got really high. And so this pissed people off, and the goal then became, within the Farm Bill, to increase output and drive down prices. At least that was why they said they were doing it. Get big or get out. And so the big change, the key change that happens in the Farm Bill, that changed things from sort of working, suppressing overproduction, keeping farmers whole, to the situation we're in now of overproduction and low prices. The key change is when the government switched from giving farmers loans to direct payments. And so the farmers now are encouraged to basically sell their corn at any price directly to the government, because each bushel that they grow, the more bushels per acre they produce, they're going to get cash money, an exact payment for each bushel, again, that they produce. And so it changes the incentives. The incentive now for many is grow, 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 because I'm guaranteed a profit based off how much I produce. There's no longer the sort of hedging your bets, wait to see what the market will do. The market might rebound, and maybe you'll sell your corn at a higher price, although the target price the government set has gone down every single year since the Farm Bill was established, pushing prices down. So the farmer could maybe wait for the market price to go back up, but that's not going to happen because policy actually structures it so that it won't. Or the farmer can go for the sure bet, grow as much as possible, knowing they're going to get a return for each bushel they produce from the money the government's going to pay them in direct payments. So again, it can be kind of confusing. Ask questions or seek clarification about any of this, because it is confusing and complicated. Again, the big change was from loans to direct payments. It changes the incentives. The farmer no longer really waits to see what the market will do. The goal becomes produce as much as possible because I'm going to get paid per unit of production. And as prices continue to fall below the cost of production because the target price keeps getting lowered, farmers have basically one option if they want to stay in business. They have to grow more corn. The price keeps going down. To stay afloat, you have to grow even more corn each year. This situation of overproduction keeps the price going down, which keeps the farmers producing more and more. And so about $5 billion a year is spent subsidizing just corn, just paying farmers to produce corn. Barely keeps the farmers afloat, but results in huge, huge profits for these major food producing companies like Coca-Cola and Cargill. Again, the system is structured now to incentivize overproduction, which keeps prices low. The farmer has one choice if they want to stay in business: grow more. And as the price continues to drop each year, they have to continue to produce and sell more each year. The government then uses our tax money to pay the target price to the farmers for the cost of production. And so who really benefits? Not the farmer. The consumers get cheap prices, but the food's not good for our health or our society or our environment or much else. Who really benefits? It's these large companies, these large food producing groups that can buy 4 cents of corn because it's subsidized, because the government sells it for almost nothing because they paid for it with our tax dollars. Or buy 4 cents of corn and turn that into a $4 box of cereal. Huge, huge profits being made off of this system that really benefits sort of a handful of stakeholders, not the majority of society or the farmer. And politicians like you to think the Farm Bill is all about the small farmer. It's really not. Again, $5 billion a year spent subsidizing corn. And in 2019, because of the trade war that started between Trump and China, essentially Trump slapped tariffs on Chinese imports. Just to clarify, which is a tax put on imported goods, Chinese imported goods, that consumers in the US then pay if they buy those goods. It's supposed to keep domestic goods competitive with foreign imports. So in a trade war that began between the Trump administration and China, Trump slapped tariffs on Chinese imports. Well, China responded in kind. They tapped us right back. And you know what we produce a shitload of that China buys a ton of? Soy. And so China stopped buying soy from us just to bail out our farmers from the trade war that was started between China and Trump last year, 2019. $16 billion just to bail farmers out because of that one situation. Again, the government's really subsidizing the food corporations, not the farmer. And federal payments, subsidies, amount to about half of the income of all Iowa farmers. And again, it's not the small farmer. The subsidy amount is based off the size and production level of the farm. So it's these huge mega farms that are getting most of the subsidies. And since the 1950s, the policy has been go big or get out. Small farmers have basically been driven out of the process. They can't produce enough to stay competitive with the low price they have to sell their corn for. Ezra Benson, Secretary of Agriculture for Eisenhower, get big or get out. Earl Butz under Nixon, adapt or die. By 1970, the battle was pretty much over. Another problem with industrial ag is farming is not like running a factory. And so typically in industrial production, you can create as much supply as you want in order to meet demand. So the cheaper you make something or the cooler you make something, it should technically enable you to sell more of it, increase the demand. Farming doesn't quite work like that. There's some constraints to it that make it not like a factory. First of all, with farming, there's ecological parameters. Climatic fluctuations, pests, locusts, droughts, things like this that create unpredictability in how much yield, how much product you're going to get off your field. Technology has allowed us to largely mitigate this, move around this. Fertilizer, genetically modified seed. This has allowed us to basically mitigate these environmental constraints, get around them. Another way that the farm is not like a factory is demand is inelastic. Our demand for food is inelastic. We all need food, but at the same time, there's only so much of it we can eat per year. And so technically, again, the cheaper you make something, it should allow you to sell more of it. But with food, no matter how cheap it gets, we can only eat so much of it. Pollan talks about the industry strategies around this fixed stomach and inelastic demand. He talks about a few different things. One is added value. This idea, the added value is when companies enrich the food, enrich flour, they add nutrients, they add convenience, health, packaging, marketing, perhaps something on there that says they're contributing to environmental causes. They turn their food product into a commodity. Right? They add value to it. Because if one farmer's selling apples and another farmer's selling apples, it's all just apples. Nothing really makes them different. So how do you differentiate your product from other people's products in order to sell more of yours? Add value, right? Add nutrients, add health, or at least the illusion of that, right, to the consumer. One of the funny things about added nutrients and enriched flour, the reason for that is because in the processing, in the wet mill, they break the food down and take all the nutrients out. And so they then add the nutrients back in because they're stripped out during processing. So more like added back in nutrients. Another way that Pollan talks about is food scientists have actually figured out how to tease out of corn a molecule that can pass right through human digestive systems without actually us consuming any calories from it. So truly food that we can eat and it won't fill us up. It'll run right through us. There's all these other techniques too that we talked about, like supersizing, large portions, adding high fructose corn syrup to all our food, pressing those evolutionary buttons, those cravings for salty, fatty, sugary foods, the fact that humans will eat 30% more if presented with large portions. The industry knows this and they use it. A student sent me this a few years ago, shortly after we'd been talking about Poland's concept of added value. What are we doing? Nature, it's an orange. Nature already made a peel for it that actually protects it, keeps lots of the toxins and poisons that could otherwise get into it out. So what do? We remove the natural peel, we put it in plastic, which will go into the dump, and we sell you oranges with added value. Right? This is the added value that Poland's talking about. Sell health, sell convenience, sell status, identity, any added value that turns potatoes or corn or water into distinguishable commodities. Or this one, my TA sent me a year or so ago. Same idea. How do I distinguish my food from yours? Added value, protection, safety, convenience. So US policy, and specifically the Farm Bill, has meant junk food is really cheap in our country, and fruits and vegetables, the healthy foods, are relatively more expensive. One of the most recent farm bills, which we sort of redo it about every 5 years, there was 26 billion in direct payments. The vast majority of these subsidies, going to the largest farms. It's not the small farmer that's getting monetary assistance through subsidies, right? These subsidies have become perverse. And again, it's the biggest beneficiaries are the food processors and the meat producers that can fatten their cattle on cheap corn or turn 4 cents of corn into a $4 box of cereal. Why? Why is a Twinkie, which goes through so many different steps, is made up of mysterious ingredients that get fermented and crushed and pulled apart and put back together to make this snack cake? All these steps, not to mention the packaging, the transportation, the marketing, the buying it at the store, the consuming it, all these steps, when an apple you sort of plant and pick and eat. Why is a Twinkie 15 cents and an apple is $1.25? It goes back to the Farm Bill, right? Again, the farm lobby likes to pretend the small farmer benefits, but that's not true. The subsidies are given based off the level of production. It's the mega farms that are getting most of the money. And the way that the system is structured, it makes the unhealthy food cheap and the healthy food relatively more expensive. This is just to show you farm acreage in the US, 268 million acres planted. This is the source of our food. We also export and import some food. It doesn't change the basic picture. And remember, all food is ultimately plant-based. Animals are simply intermediaries. So in order for them to grow and provide products for us, whether that be milk or meat, they have to first consume plants. And because of trophic levels, about 90% of the energy gained through that plant material to grow the animal is lost. Only about 10% of that energy is converted into edible products for humans. So it's really, really consumptive. And look at the point of the graph is to show you how much acreage is devoted to just 3 different categories: grains, oil seeds, and hay, sort of the cheap commodity crops that are used for animal feed or processed foods. Only 1.1% of our farmland is used for growing vegetables and fruits.